I was 26, single, and completely obsessed with solo backpacking. A few times every year I'd disappear into the Appalachian Mountains with nothing but my backpack, a map, and enough supplies for several days. No phone service, no people, no distractions. It was exactly how I liked it. One October afternoon, I was hiking through a remote section of the Cherokee National Forest when the weather changed faster than I'd ever seen. The sky turned almost black. Cold wind ripped through the trees. Within minutes, rain slammed into the forest so hard that visibility dropped to almost nothing. Lightning exploded overhead. Branches snapped around me. I knew staying exposed could be deadly. While searching desperately for shelter, I noticed something between the trees. A tiny weathered cabin. It looked abandoned. The roof sagged slightly. Paint peeled from every wall. One small porch. One wooden door. Nothing else. Inside smelled like mold, wet wood, and old smoke. The room contained only a rusted cot frame, a crooked table, one chair, and a stone fireplace packed with years of cold ash. It wasn't comfortable, but it was dry. I dropped my backpack and waited for the storm to pass. After sitting quietly for a while, curiosity made me explore. That's when everything stopped feeling normal. In one corner sat a sleeping bag. Unlike everything else inside, it looked relatively new. Someone had used it recently. Several unopened food cans rested on the table beside plastic water containers. Then I noticed the wall beside the front door. Long, deep, violent scratch marks. There were dozens of them, almost as if someone had clawed at the wood until their fingernails broke. My stomach tightened. I walked outside to inspect the door. There was a heavy steel bracket mounted beside it, perfect for locking the cabin from the outside. I froze. Returning inside, I examined the single window. It wouldn't open. Looking closer, I realized why. Several screws had been driven through the frame from outside. The inside wood around the window was shredded with desperate pry marks. Someone had tried unbelievably hard to escape. Whoever had stayed here hadn't stayed willingly. Every instinct told me to leave. But the storm outside had only gotten worse. Lightning struck so close the entire cabin shook. I convinced myself I'd leave as soon as the rain slowed. That decision almost killed me. Nearly an hour later, I heard scratching. Very soft, dragging slowly across the outer wall. I held my breath. Silence. Then, two heavy footsteps landed on the porch. Not walking, almost dropping. I stared at the door. The handle moved slightly. Then the entire door pushed inward. Not opening, just bending. Someone outside leaned their full body weight against it. The latch rattled. Whoever stood outside wasn't trying to come in. They were making sure I couldn't get out. Adrenaline exploded through my body. I shoved everything into my backpack without organizing anything. I was halfway zipped when glass shattered behind me. Something crashed through the window. A burning bottle rolled across the floor. Fire spread instantly. Within seconds, the old cabin became an oven. Smoke swallowed the room. I lunged toward the door. It wouldn't move. Something had jammed it shut. Outside. Exactly like I feared. I slammed my shoulder into the wood. Nothing. Again. Again. The hinges screamed. One final hit ripped the entire door loose. Cold rain hit my face as I stumbled outside. I sprinted into the darkness. I barely made it 30 yards. Someone tackled me from behind. We slammed into the muddy ground. The attacker never spoke clearly. Just angry grunts and broken yelling. He clawed at my face, wrapped both hands around my throat, tried forcing my head into the mud. I kicked wildly until he lost balance. Then I ran. I didn't look back. Not until I reached higher ground. The cabin burned like a giant torch between the trees. The storm couldn't even put it out. Hours later, Completely exhausted, I crawled beneath 2 fallen logs and waited for daylight. Eventually, I reached a trailhead where another hiker found me. The hospital treated burns across my neck and arm. Police searched the area. They never found the cabin, or whoever attacked me. That trip ended something inside me. I never camped alone again. My friend Charles loved exploring abandoned places, factories, hospitals, forgotten rail tunnels. If someone told him not to go somewhere, he absolutely would. One weekend, he found an old, decommissioned fire lookout tower hidden miles inside a forest. No fences, no warning signs, just 70 feet of rusting steel disappearing into the sky. It took nearly 4 miles of hiking without trails before we finally saw it. Standing beneath that tower made me nervous immediately. The staircase creaked with every step. The wind made the entire structure sway. Still, the view from the top was unbelievable. Mountains stretched forever. By sunset, we decided to spend the night. Huge mistake. Darkness arrived quickly. Soon the forest became nothing more than an endless black ocean surrounding us. Trying to break the silence, Charles smacked his metal water bottle against one of the support beams. The loud clang echoed for what felt like miles. We laughed for about 30 seconds. Then Charles suddenly stopped smiling. He quietly pointed toward the trees. Far below us, a single white light floated between the trunks. At first, I assumed it belonged to another hiker, but something wasn't right. It moved too smoothly. No bouncing. No shaking, almost like it floated above the ground. Then, without warning, it shot forward dozens of feet instantly. Neither of us spoke. We simply watched. 10 minutes later, the light stopped directly beneath our tower. It remained perfectly still. Charles leaned over the railing. "Hey! No answer! Everything okay down there?" Nothing. Not even footsteps. We went back inside the lookout room. Neither of us admitted how scared we actually were. About 20 minutes later, clang. Metal echoed through the tower. Another hit. Then another. It sounded like someone was striking the support beams with heavy steel. Then came grinding noises. Long, slow, painful, as if metal were being cut. We sat against the door in complete silence. Then I noticed movement outside one of the windows. A shadow crossed the glass. Right beside us. 70 feet above the ground. I couldn't breathe. There was no balcony outside that window. Nothing to stand on. Yet something had just passed it. We never opened that door. We stayed awake until sunrise. When daylight finally arrived, the woods looked completely empty. No footprints. No person. No light. We packed immediately. Descending the staircase, Charles suddenly froze. 3 sections below us, part of the staircase was gone. Not broken. Removed. Bolts missing. Steel missing. Someone had dismantled an entire section during the night while we sat trapped above. We had no choice but to jump across the gap. One mistake would have sent us falling dozens of feet. We never returned. I've camped most of my adult life. I've dealt with bears, coyotes, mountain lions. None of them ever scared me as much as one trip into Kentucky. I planned a quiet 3-night camping trip inside Daniel Boone National Forest. The first day was perfect. Nothing unusual. That changed after midnight. Something woke me. Through the fabric of my tent, I saw orange light flickering outside. Carefully unzipping the entrance, I saw what looked like a campfire burning hundreds of yards away. Someone else had to be camping nearby. Odd, because I hadn't seen another vehicle all day. Morning came. I walked to where I'd seen the fire. There was nothing. No ashes. No burned ground. No footprints. Nothing. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. The following night proved I hadn't. Sometime after midnight, A deafening crack exploded through the forest. A huge tree collapsed somewhere south of my campsite. The sound echoed for several seconds. 10 minutes later, another tree came crashing down, much closer this time. Then came something I'll never forget, a deep rumbling sound. Not exactly a groan, something in between. It groaned. Something in between. It continued, without stopping, for nearly a full minute. Every hair on my body stood up. I gripped my rifle and aimed at the tent entrance until daylight finally returned. The next morning I investigated. The fallen tree wasn't rotten. It hadn't blown over. The trunk looked ripped apart. Huge splinters pointed outward. Long gouges covered the exposed wood, almost like something unbelievably powerful had shredded it. Then I noticed something lying beside a broken branch. A blue bandana. A climbing carabiner. Both belonged to me. I checked my backpack. They were missing. Someone had opened my pack while I slept, stood close enough to touch my tent, then left my own belongings near the damaged tree. That wasn't curiosity. That was a message. I didn't finish the trip. I packed everything in less than 5 minutes and practically ran back to my truck. The entire hike out felt wrong. Every few minutes I'd stop because I was certain someone was walking just beyond the trees. I never saw anyone, but I never felt alone either. Police searched the area later. They found nothing unusual. No explanation. No suspect. No answers. Only silence. Ending forests don't need ghosts to be terrifying. Isolation changes everything. One strange sound becomes impossible to explain. One unknown person becomes impossible to escape. And sometimes, the most horrifying part isn't what you see. It's realizing something has been watching you long before you noticed it. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, subscribe for more true wilderness horror every week. Sleep carefully, because some places are far better left unexplored.